Welcome to Bend and Snatch. I'm Pennie, your host, and today I'm talking to myself. I was supposed to be interviewing someone, but they had a real technical malfunction, and this is the world of the internet. So now I'm by myself, and I was thinking maybe I should just ask the questions that I was going to ask them to myself. I don't know if this is going to be the lamest thing ever, or if it'll actually be quite good. But I wrote some really good questions, and maybe I'll come up with really good answers for them. I don't know. I didn't write them with me in mind. I wrote them for someone else. So let's see what happens, I guess. Okay, so am I a fan of the sunny weather? I sure am. I've been having a lovely time in the sun. And I think it is probably my favourite time of the year when the sun starts coming out. I can literally just feel the depression disappearing. And I am now just a ray of sunshine. I can feel all of the dopamine just like being manufactured in my skin as the sun touches me, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think if I lived in a sunnier place, I would be living a much, much happier life. But something I was thinking about today while I was at work was how a lot of people are really suffering in the sunshine because they're wearing a lot of clothes. And I imagine a big part of that is probably people feeling uncomfortable wearing less clothes. And I think that's a shame. A lot of people have convinced themselves that there is something wrong with, I don't know, their legs, their arms, whatever, because society is terrible and has probably reinforced that idea over and over and over again. So then you end up coming to the gym wearing thick trousers and long sleeve shirts and doing exercise when it's one of the hottest days of the year so far, and it is hard. It's much harder. Then you're overheating much quicker. Everything is more difficult. You can't lift as much. You can't move as fast. And the same kind of walking outside. I went for a run today and it was shorts weather. It's like 25 degrees or something. That is a good day. And most people are very covered up. And like, sure, it's people's prerogative. You can wear whatever you want, but people must be really overheating, and not always because that's what they want, but just because they feel uncomfortable. And I obviously don't have a solution to this because society is terrible and people are full of anxiety and body issues. But for me, working through my own body issues, things that really made a big difference was actually just doing it anyway. I know that's probably sounds a bit absurd, but like just going out in shorts and realizing that it's actually fine. And then the more you do something, every time you do it, it's like this little tick, tick, tick in that like I'm a person who wears shorts category. And it's the same with training topless. So I had top surgery almost 3 years ago now, 2.5 years ago. This will be my second summer, I think. I don't know how time works. Being topless is kind of a scary thing because I don't know if I'm going to be hate crimed, especially as the world has really ramped up its transphobia of late, and nobody reads me as boy, man. I'm read as girl. So then girl with pecs rather than girl with boobs is a confusing sight, and it's scary because you don't know how people are going to react to you, but you can't control other people's reactions, and sometimes it's just hot. Like on Wednesday at work, I was training and then I changed my shirt because I had a class, but then someone was like half an hour late and I didn't know if they were coming or not, so I had another class afterwards. So I just took my clean shirt off so I could train some more, so I wouldn't make two shirts dirty, but also so I didn't have to put the shirt that I'd already taken off back on, because that didn't seem like a right thing to do. Once it's off, if it's dirty anyway, I'll obviously put the clean one back on. Anyways. So then I'm just by myself in the gym, doing my skin the cats without my top on, and that's maybe only the second time that I've been brave enough to do that. And some random man, who I've never seen before, just comes to the gym, and I'm like, oh, hi, are you here for weightlifting? And he wasn't. He was here for High Rocks, which was next door. And part of me was a bit scared, but he was normal and we had a normal conversation and he didn't say anything weird or stare at me weird, and it was fine. And I think every time an interaction like that occurs, it's another like little tick in it's fine. Nobody actually cares. For the most part, nobody actually cares about anything, and you should just do what you want to do. And if you're hot, you should wear less clothes if you want to, because then you'll be less hot. So hopefully that little tangent about clothes is helpful to someone. I think it is really hard, and obviously people in bigger bodies are treated very differently by society in general than people in smaller bodies. But like, fuck them. Who gives a shit what anyone else thinks, so long as they're not like interacting with you? But maybe that's a reason for everyone to learn how to fight. So then when the fascists come for you, you can punch them in the nose, you know? So the next question, shall I just keep reading the questions? I don't know. Is this ridiculous? Do you ever struggle with motivation or body image yourself? How do you handle that as someone in the fitness industry? I guess that was something that I was just talking about already. Absolutely, I struggle with motivation and body image stuff. I think my body image stuff is much better than it has been historically, and what has made that better is just doing more exercise, spending more time in my body. The more like strong and fit I get, the more comfortable I feel, I think, and the better my clothes feel on my body, the better I feel. And part of that is just buying clothes that are the right size and not clothes that are like too small, too big. In terms of motivation, I think the weather plays the biggest part for me, to be honest. Over winter, I really struggle with motivation a lot. So then what I rely on is just routine and doing things on the same day in the same order. I write everything down. So then that's just a thing that I have to do. I treat training as one of my tasks. So like I'll put my clients in, I'll put my exercise in, I'll put my desk work in, I'll put the podcast in, and I'll treat it as a task. So I'm allocating time for it on the days throughout the week, the same as I would any other meeting. Like if I'm putting a consultation in, I'll put it in kind of around my training. I treat it as something that is as important as any other thing that I'm doing. And that makes it much easier to do, because if you allow other things into that space, then it's much harder to put it anywhere, because now you've used the time that you would have used. And then it's like part motivation, but really it's like logistics. And if you just make it happen from the beginning and just say to yourself, well, this is a thing that matters to me. If I don't do it, I know I'll feel terrible. If I don't do it, I know I'm not going to achieve any of the goals that I said I wanted to achieve. So I have to do it. So then you're just putting things in. And I think sometimes people need to rely less on things like motivation and willpower, and actually just create systems that work for you, whatever that might be, so you can just keep doing the thing regardless. It doesn't matter how you feel. Sometimes you just do it anyway, and like maybe you make it less, or maybe it's not as hard, but like if you can just do it anyway, just do something anyway, then every time you do it, it's another tick in that box, right? Like I was saying earlier, of I'm a person who does this. And at some point, once you've done that tick so many times, it's not a battle to do the thing anymore, because you're just the person who does that thing. And you kind of just have to go through that process with all the new things that you want to be able to do. Can you share a time when you saw someone completely transform, not just physically, but in their confidence and self-worth? So this week, someone in one of my classes actually said something lovely, which I thought I'd share. So she's in her like mid-50s maybe, and she's been coming to 2 of my classes every Thursday for a year and a half. She's probably not missed any, maybe like the odd 1 or 2. And there's like a strength and conditioning class followed by a flexibility class. And when she started, her flexibility was like what you would expect a 50-something-year-old's flexibility. You've not ever trained flexibility before to be like. And then yesterday, we were doing Jefferson Cole's off a step, and she was like way past her toes with her hands. She was like proper pressed all the way in, and I was like, this is incredible. This is the best you've ever been. And she said, you've actually changed my life, Pennie. I've never been this strong or flexible in my whole entire life. And I love that. I love it for 2 reasons. One, being able to have that sort of impact on an individual's life is really fucking cool. And it's probably my favorite thing about working in fitness in general, because you can change someone's life by helping them be stronger and fitter and more flexible. Those things can make a person's life better, because that person can now enjoy more life. You can do more things. Things are more easy. You can have more fun. And that is awesome. And then the second reason that I really love it is because a lot of people assume that as you get older, you just can't do things and you can't get better at things. And like maybe it's not safe to do things, especially I think for women. Seeing women do exercise over 50 isn't a common occurrence. And I just love that I work with so many women who are over 50 who are strong as fuck, and it's awesome, and who are like working really hard, really consistently, and like learning how to use their bodies in ways that maybe they haven't since they were young, or maybe they haven't ever. And it's incredible because it shows that you can keep getting better at stuff. There isn't this like magic cut off where after 30 it's all downhill, everything starts deteriorating. Yeah, sure, if you don't do anything, but if you do stuff, you can still get better. And if you weren't an elite athlete in your like 20s and 30s, there's a really good chance that you can keep getting better for a really long time, because you haven't hit that like peak athletic potential, you know, because you weren't an athlete, which means there's always going to be room to improve for a really long time. And I think that's incredible. And I hope that that inspires people to just keep going, keep trying, and even to just start from now, even if it's a thing that you've never done before and maybe you're in your 50s or 60s. Like, it's not too late. You can just do stuff. You can just start now. And it doesn't even really matter what it is, although I really do recommend strength training and flexibility training. But like anything that you want to do, if you just do it consistently from now until forever, your life will be better for it. And I am 100% certain that that is true. 99% certain. I guess if you're cycling your bike and you get hit by a car and then you can never do anything again, that would be less good. But that's a rare example, you know? So, yeah, I think it's cool. There's still a lot of fear around women getting bulky from lifting. How do I address that myth with my clients? I actually don't have that many clients that are worried about that, to be honest. Maybe in some of my classes at JD, because in commercial gym spaces, women are more likely to be more worried about those things. But for the most part, the people who work with me come to me because they want to be more strong or they want to be more flexible. It's very rare people come to me for aesthetic reasons, which is great. I love that because it's much more fun training for like performance goals than it is for aesthetic goals. And it's a lot easier, I think, to keep people motivated and keep people working hard at it as well. But I think within more commercial gym spaces, if women start saying things like that to me, I usually just tell them that I have been lifting weights for 10 years and to look at me. And I feel like that really dispels the myth that you get bulky because I am very small. And I have tried to be big and strong, but it's very difficult to eat enough protein when you're a vegetarian and be able to fit it all into the day, you know, when you're only 5'2". It's a lot of food that you have to eat. People don't get big and bulky by accident. It's really, really hard work. And unless you really, really want it, it doesn't just happen. And usually when people look at me and see how scrawny I am, that is a good little myth bust. Maybe one day I won't be so scrawny and it won't work and I'll have to think of something else. But I doubt it, honestly. I doubt it. What inspired me to become a personal trainer and how has my perspective on fitness evolved over time? So I actually became a personal trainer almost by accident. I used to be a person. I am still a person. I used to be a journalist and my dad had just got sick and I was really overweight and I was drinking and I was smoking and I was really stressed about my dad. And as a journalist, people were like feeding you all of the time, like taking you out for dinner, buying you drinks. At events, there'll be like loads of beer. So I gained a lot of weight. And watching my dad get sick, I started to really get scared because I was like, oh no. Because he was like maybe 58 when he had this like little minor stroke that nobody knew about. And then that led to vascular dementia. So by the time he was like 61, maybe, that was the beginning of the end. We thought it was Alzheimer's and then it like really, really fast, 0 to 100, lost my dad, but then he was just like a vessel of a person for another 10 or so years. It was a really terrible time. So at the beginning of this, watching it happen, I'm very afraid. And I realized I should start taking better care of myself. So I stopped smoking, stopped drinking, stopped trying to do some exercise. And I was a journalist, right? So I decided to set up this online magazine, which was called Oh My God Fitness Magazine. This would actually be my 10-year anniversary, I think, this year. And the goal of that was to like create this online magazine. It was, I guess, sort of like a blog, but more magazine-y. Part of it was to keep me accountable, because if I'm telling people that I'm doing things, then I have to do them. Part of it was because if I can find ways to get paid for things, I'm more likely to do it. It's much easier to be doing anything, really, if it feels like I'm getting something more out of it. So I was doing that. And then a company who does PT courses, so it was Premier International then, I think it's NASAM now, they were like, we'll give you access to our course for free if you write about it every week. And I was like, sure, okay. So then I did the course and I actually really loved it. And I was like, this is actually much more fun than being a journalist. So I decided to do both things at the same time. So I did both for a little while. And then slowly, over the next year or two, I was like, it's much nicer to not have to spend all my time at the computer. It's easier to make money as a personal trainer than it is as a journalist because you work really, really hard for really long periods of time for not very much money as a journalist, unless you're already a rich person, I think. And that isn't as fun as just playing in the gym, you know? But I think a lot of the skills from journalism came in really handy. So, like, learning stuff, investigating stuff, probably some of the talking stuff, filming stuff. So lots of the skills carried over. So that was how I ended up doing personal training. And I think my perspective on fitness has changed over time, probably quite dramatically. At the beginning, when I didn't know anything, I was aiming for healthy, but it was also really fueled by skinny. And because I didn't know anything, it was really easy to fall into a lot of the nonsense that fitness spaces really throw at you. So I'd be wasting money on gluten-free flour from Holland and Barrett so I could make gluten-free bread because I thought it was better. But it's obviously not better. It's sad bread. The gluten is the bit that makes bread good. And I'm not gluten intolerant or a celiac, so it was really a waste of time and money. But things like that, and going down all of those like wellness pathways where it's like clean eating, detoxing, all of those things that seem so outrageous now. But 10 years ago, I didn't know any better, and that's what I thought. And you see it a lot now. These same things, people are still talking about them, but some of them are even more outrageous, like eating raw meat and stuff. It's some crazy stuff. And looking at it now, a lot of that stuff is this very scary little pipeline into alt-right fascism. So I'm really glad that I did some learning. I did a nutrition course where I learned a lot on how to read scientific papers, and I met a lot of scientists, and it was all very useful. And I think that really helped change the way I see things and made me start being a lot more critical, using like my better thinking brain for working stuff out. And I think that's really important. And I think my perspective on fitness will probably continue to change over time. The stuff that I'm into keeps changing a little bit as we go along. And as you learn more things and meet more people, it's always going to change. And that's also how it stays fun. I don't know how anyone keeps just doing the same exact thing forever, but you do have to keep doing the fitness forever for it to have the benefits when you're an old person, right? So just finding new things, learning new things, seeing new ways of doing stuff. I feel like that's a really important part of the whole process. What's one overlooked benefit of strength training for women that I wish more people knew about? Okay, so look, listen to me. If you do not eat enough food, part one, then everything inside of you suffers. Even if you're eating enough food throughout the day in general, if you're doing a lot of exercise, especially if it's big chunks of exercise, lots of cardio things, maybe you're marathon training or whatever, right? And you're fasting for bits. Your body doesn't know you're going to eat later. It's just using what it's got now. And if you don't have enough, then it starts taking stuff out of what's already inside you. So it can really affect your bone density. And that one's real important. But then also things like your hair and your nails. And people can end up with some real serious health issues. And nobody ever really talks about it. Especially when people are like promoting things like intermittent fasting, which might be fine for guys, but for women and AFAB people, it's not necessarily a very helpful thing to be doing lots of exercise and not eating, because it can like really mess with the amount of energy that's available at any given point, and that is not good. Maybe that's a thing I can talk more about. But then the second thing is, the more muscle you have, the better your life is going to be. The better equipped you are to like do hard things, the more supported your bones will be and your joints will be. The easier it is for you to open your own jars so you're not having to ask men to do it, which feels very important, to be honest. That stuff is really important, and I think society and patriarchy in general wants to convince women not to do things like strength training because it wants women to be small and weak and frail, because then they're easier to control. And the stronger you are, the harder you are to control. And the braver and more confident you are, the harder you are to control. And I think it is in everyone's interest to get strong as fuck and to be as confident and as brave as possible, so then we can smash the patriarchy. You know, that feels important too. Lift weights, smash the patriarchy. That's got to be a soundbite, right? What is the most outrageous thing that someone has said to me in the gym? So when I was still a baby PT, one of the PTs, male PTs, who was working in the same gym as me, comes up to me and like pokes me in the back of my thighs and is like, I can help you get rid of your cellulite. And I was very embarrassed by this scenario, and I was like, sure, I don't know anything yet. I think I'd been a PT for like a month or two. Maybe this boy knows some things. Let's see if he can help me. So he got me doing some like lying leg curls on the floor with the cable machine. And I was like, okay, sure. And then I went home and looked up cellulite. Why can I not talk? And it turns out that there's actually nothing that you can do. And It doesn't even matter how lean you are, you probably will always have cellulite, because a big part of why we can see it is actually just because of the way the cell walls in your legs are built. And women, apparently, they're like crisscrossed walls, like this. And in men, they're more straight walls, or the other way around. But one of those two things. And then because of that difference in how the walls are, I'm going to have to look it up now. I'll write it in the notes somewhere. That's why you can see the cellulite on more women and you can't really see it on men. So that was outrageous. He did a lot of outrageous things. There are a few really outrageous boys in that gym. One of them would go up to women and like just grab the fat on their arms in the gym to try and shame them into doing PT with him. Oh my god, and one PT, this one was actually a woman, which makes it even more outrageous, honestly. I was with my client on the bench and she was with her client at the other end of the room, and she just starts yelling at her and she's like, what did I tell you? Chicken and broccoli, you're supposed to just eat the chicken and broccoli. And then she picks up her arm and goes like this, flapping her little tricep fat, and that was mortifying. And my client was like, never yell at me. I was like, why would I yell at you? Mortifying. What a terrible time. Things like that used to happen a lot, actually, in the commercial gym. Things like that do not happen anymore now that I'm by myself, which is a relief, actually. Any hilarious gym fail stories that you can safely share without getting anyone in trouble? There are a couple of times, very close together actually, when I was working upstairs at Pure Gym. I was training my client here, my mate was training his client on the rack next to me, and someone was training on the rack next to him. And then he was squatting and he took all of the plates off one side. Never do that. All of them, all off, and then the bar flipped and almost hit my mate and his client, missed them marginally, and then the exact same thing happened only a few weeks later to the same friend. And was it the same client? Maybe a different client, I have no idea. And that was terrifying. That wasn't a hilarious story at all, but it was definitely a gym fail, and nobody got hurt, nobody died. Hopefully both of those people who took all of the plates off the bar at once learnt a lesson and are better gym people for it. Hopefully. Okay, rapid fire closing questions. What's your go-to hype song before a tough set of squats? Probably, gosh, I don't know, actually. It's probably got to be a Linkin Park song. That's usually my go-to. Linkin Park, maybe, or Dead Sarah. They're often things that get me going, get me ready. Favourite guilty pleasure food, and do you even feel guilty about it? I don't feel guilty about any of the foods. Favourite guilty pleasure food? I mean, I eat chocolate every single day. I actually have 7 Easter eggs downstairs, and I'm really excited because they're probably going to last me such a long time, because Amanda doesn't eat chocolate, which means most of it will be mine, and that is excellent. What's one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self just starting out in fitness? Be careful of who you listen to. Most people are stupid. Learn to read some science / find some scientists in nutrition science and in strength science and follow them, and just pay for the research reviews that they do. So then if you can't be bothered to read the papers, you can just read their reviews of the papers, and that saves you a lot of time because they understand it better than you do, no matter how good at learning how to read things you are. Because you're not a scientist, you're just a little gay trying to be fit. That is actually really money well spent. Start doing that as soon as possible. So those are all my questions. That was my quick fire round. Hopefully that was an interesting podcast for you. I don't know what this format of me just interviewing myself is like for you. Hopefully it wasn't ridiculous, and hopefully you learned some things. And hopefully next time my podcast guest is ready with all of the appropriate equipment. So until next time, friends, see you laters.